Today, we're diving into one of the most incredible marvels of human development, how a baby's brain actually gets wired for language. And we're going to discover that the secret ingredient isn't just about hearing words. Nope, it's something way more fundamental, that spark of human connection. I mean, really think about that for a second. How does this tiny person, who can't even roll over yet, manage to tackle something as wildly complex as language? They go from coos and gurgles to full-blown sentences in just a couple of years. It really does feel like magic, but it's not. It's a brilliant process of discovery happening inside their amazing, fast-growing brain. And honestly, this is the perfect way to see them. A baby isn't just some passive little sponge soaking up sounds. Oh no, from the moment they're born, they are incredibly active learners. They're running tiny experiments, collecting data, and analyzing everything around them. In a very real sense, they are the most dedicated scientists on the entire planet. So, what's the first big puzzle these little scientists have to solve? Well, they've got to crack the language code itself. And believe me, it is a monumental task. Get this. Across all the languages in the world, there are about 800 different phonetic sounds. 600 consonants, 200 vowels. To a newborn, that's just a giant wall of noise. Their first mission is to figure out which of these hundreds of sounds actually matter for the specific language they're hearing day in and day out. So how in the world do they do it? Well, they have a built-in superpower. It's called statistical learning. Babies are, without a doubt, the best statisticians you'll ever meet. They are constantly, unconsciously tracking the patterns in the language they hear. Their brains are figuring out which sounds are most common, which ones follow others, all to find the hidden boundaries between words. And here's where it gets really interesting. At the very beginning, a baby's brain is completely open to any and all possibilities. They start life as true citizens of the world. This is just astonishing. For those first 6 months, a baby in, say, an English-speaking home can hear the subtle differences in Mandarin or Hindi just as clearly as a baby growing up in Beijing or Delhi. They are literally born prepared to learn any language on Earth. But here's the thing. This incredible ability doesn't last forever. As their brain starts to specialize, that superpower begins to fade. They start to zero in on only the sounds that are meaningful in their own specific environment. This timeline really shows that critical window. From birth to 6 months, they are these universal listeners. But right around 8 months, a huge shift starts. By the time they're blowing out that first birthday candle, they've morphed into native language specialists. They become experts in their own language's sounds. But in the process, they lose the ability to easily tell the difference between sounds from other languages. And this is illustrated perfectly in one famous study. Researchers tested American and Japanese babies on their ability to hear the difference between R and L sounds. Now, at 6 months old, both groups were total aces. They could hear the difference easily. But by 10 months, the American babies got even better at it, while the Japanese babies got worse. Why? Well, because that R versus L distinction is super important in English, but it's not in Japanese. Their brains were literally pruning away to connections they just didn't need anymore. And all of this brings us to the core question, right? How does the brain know which of these connections to keep and which ones to let go of? It turns out it's not just about hearing the sounds. The answer lies in something called the social gating effect. So is that incredible statistical learning ability we talked about enough, all on its own? Or, and this is the key, does it actually require another human being to flip the switch? To find out, researcher Dr. Patricia Kuhl and her team designed a really groundbreaking experiment. Okay, so here's what they did. They took a group of 9-month-old American babies who had never, ever heard Mandarin before. One group got 12 play sessions with a real, live Mandarin tutor who read to them and played with them. The other groups, well, they were exposed to the exact same words, the same stories for the same amount of time, but it was delivered through a TV screen or just an audio recording. And of course, it's worth remembering that this whole process hinges on the basic ability to hear in the first place. So, what do you think happened in the experiment? The results were wow. They were stunning and completely unambiguous. The babies who played with a real, live person, they learned the Mandarin sounds incredibly well. In fact, they were just as good as babies who had been listening to Mandarin in Taiwan for their entire lives. But the babies who just watched the TV or listened to the audio, they learned absolutely nothing. Zero. Their brains showed no change at all. This led scientists to the social gating hypothesis. The idea is that social interaction acts like a key or gate. When a baby is engaged with another human being, making eye contact, interacting, their social brain basically opens this gate. It tells the learning parts of the brain, hey, pay attention, this stuff is important. Without that social key, the information, well, it just washes right over them. So what does all this incredible science mean for parents, for caregivers, for really anyone who has a baby in their life? Let's bring this out of the lab and into the living room. Well, the social environment a child grows up in has a massive, massive impact. A landmark study found that some children hear over 3 times as many words as others. And this isn't just about learning a bigger vocabulary. It points to a huge difference in the amount of that direct, back-and-forth verbal interaction that is so critical for opening that social gate to learning. Now, what's really cool is that adults all over the world, we instinctively use this special kind of speech with babies. It's often called parentese. You know it. It's that high-pitched, sing-songy voice where we stretch out our vowels. We might feel a little silly doing it, but the science shows it is incredibly effective. That stretching actually makes the phonetic sounds clearer and easier for a baby's brain to analyze. So here's the most important takeaway. Social interaction isn't just helpful, it is essential. It's not a passive thing. So when your baby babbles at you, babble back. Those little back and forth conversational turns are incredibly powerful for their brain development. And go ahead, use that parentese voice. It's scientifically proven to help them learn. At the end of the day, it's not the screen, not the app, not the audio file. It is the real, live, human connection that sparks the brain for this amazing journey. And that leaves us with a pretty fascinating thought, doesn't it? If a real human presence is the key that unlocks the ridiculously complex code of language, it just makes you wonder, what other incredible human abilities, what other superpowers are being gated by our social brain, just waiting for the right connection to bring them to life?